Hello, this is Antoine Vanner, the author of the Dawlish Chronicles series of naval adventures set in the Victorian period. And I'm talking to you on the 30th of November 2018, which is for me a very memorable and satisfying day because it sees the publication of the seventh of the Dawlish Chronicles series, Britannia's mission. In the year since we published the last book, Britannia's Gamble, we've been very, very busy indeed. We moved down to rural Somerset, had to get settled into a new community, had a lot of things to do around the house and land, etc. But to keep momentum going for the writing, I had a small writing cabin built separately from the house, and that's allowed me to get on with the work. It's been one of those stories which I found really began to take off almost independently of me because of the momentum it gathered through the situation, the characters, the action, the dynamics, etc. So I've enjoyed it quite a bit. You may wonder what it's about. Well, it is in fact sharp-eyed readers may have remembered that from Britannia's Gamble there's a mention that HMS Leonidas, Dawlish's ship, was, quote, returning from Zanzibar to Malta after a bruising assignment on the East African coast. But it wasn't actually described in detail what that bruising assignment was. So all is now revealed in Britannia's mission. It's set in 1883. It's a period when there are significant international developments taking place which represent a background to the story. And Captain Nicholas Dawlish with his cruiser HMS Leonidas are sent to the Indian Ocean in order to deal with that situation. Well, there are three main concerns he's going to have to cope with. The first is the question of the Indian Ocean slave trade, which has been running for a long time, is now almost on an industrial basis. And Britain has been dedicated to eradication of that trade for many years, not wholly successfully. But now important groups in Britain with political clout are demanding that for once and for all an end be made to it. The trade is pretty ghastly. It involves armed gangs, in fact small armies of slavers, striking inland from the East African coast into the African interior as far as the Congo Basin, devastating villages, killing large numbers of people, enslaving more, driving them back over hundreds of miles to the coast, with many of them dying on the way, and then being shipped in absolutely inhuman conditions in dhows up along the East African coast, over to Arabia, to the insatiable slave markets there. Why is there such outrage building up now about this? Well, for the first time, very large numbers of Christian missionaries are appearing in Africa, and many of them are driven by the outrage against the slave trade. Some of them are putting their lives in danger by establishing themselves right in the path of these missions, and there's demand that they be protected. For anybody who actually lived in Africa for a long time, like I have, it's always been fascinating to realize how in a very, very short period, about 70 years from the mid-19th century onwards, this massive conversion of people to Christianity happened in sub-Saharan Africa. And all the various Christian denominations were involved in it. They were heroic people, although they were often somewhat naive. They varied from very simple people, like sometimes like even housemaids or shop assistants or that, who volunteered for the work without any real understanding of what they were undertaking. Or in other cases, they may have been representatives of very large and very well-funded religious organizations. But regardless of who they were, there's something very heroic about them. They signed up for years of loneliness, years of exposure to tropical illnesses, and in the worst case, to martyrdom. So their presence is important in the story. They're not necessarily easy people to save. They may not want to be saved. The third element occurs in the geopolitical sense, yeah? Because the German Empire, which is a very new creation, it's only been proclaimed 12 years before, in 1871, has now consolidated itself as the major land power in Europe and is beginning to look outside for the first time. And Germany is beginning to wonder if it's got a future also as a colonial power, and is looking for potential places for colonies. One of those places potentially is East Africa. What's that going to mean for Britain? Well, it's quite a complex situation, because Britain doesn't necessarily want to be there at this time. It's very extended, overextended at this time because of commitments in Egypt, India and other places. Yeah? So it doesn't want to be there, but on the other hand, it doesn't want anybody else to take it over either. So there's a large number of problems that Dawlish has got to balance in favour of British interests. And in fact, one of his challenges is to decide what those interests actually are before he can even know how best to serve them. So that's the story. As always, he's going to encounter difficulties. There will be some pretty dreadful happenings at sea, battles on land, battles in swamp. But the final determinant is going to be his relationship with the Imperial German Navy, because the German Navy is now appearing on the world's oceans for the first time, and is of course a necessity if they are going to have establish a colonial empire. So how are the Germans and the Brits for the first time going to work together or work against each other in a situation like this? So that's the story. That's Britannia's mission. I hope you'll enjoy it. I'm very glad you're listening to me and that you're reading my books as well. Yeah? And I'd invite you to keep up to date with what I do, what I write through my website, dawlishchronicles.com, or through my blog, which you can also access through it. And I invite you also to sign up to my mailing list, which I can keep you up to speed with, and through which you will also be given free short stories which you can download on Kindle, short stories which fill in some of the gaps between the actions in the novels themselves. So with that, thank you very much indeed for listening to me. Thanks for my readership, your readership, and let me hope you'll enjoy Britannia's mission. Thank you.